He drove his vehicle straight into a parked squad car by the roadside. Tossing his liquor bottle aside, he attempted to flee the scene but was tackled to the ground by the recovering officers. Once at the station, a search revealed no valid identification, only a strange, unexplained device. A police officer confiscated the item for the time being. Dragged into a cell by two officers, he appeared intoxicated, but the moment they left, his eyes cleared instantly. Across from him, in the opposite cell, sat his high-value target. That man, dressed in a sharp suit, had swindled $10 million from the mob. The assassin remained patient, waiting for the perfect opening. However, his cellmate had other plans, fixating on the assassin's watch and looking for a fight.
I don't give a shit.
Ignoring the provocation, the assassin waited for the device he left in the lobby to do its work. Moments later, smoke triggered the fire alarms throughout the station. He immediately neutralized the cellmate who had unwittingly provided a distraction. Realizing his life was on the line, the swindler across the hall began screaming for help, but his cries were drowned out by the blaring sirens. The assassin struck the insolent thug down and then joined the swindler in shouting for help to draw the guards in.
He's gonna die!
When a sergeant noticed the commotion and entered the cell to check on the downed man, he called for backup. Seizing the moment, the assassin snatched the sergeant's baton, knocked him unconscious, and grabbed the officer's revolver, aiming it directly at the opposite cell. The gunshot echoed through the precinct, commanding everyone's attention. He gripped the keys and moved slowly toward the swindler. But just as he slid the key into the lock, he froze. Raising his hands slowly, he found himself cornered and arrested on the spot by the precinct's elite female officer. As he began mapping out a counter strategy in his head, backup arrived. He dropped the gun and handcuffed himself to the cell bars. His skills weren't what they used to be, but he hadn't realized that the organization had already dispatched a second, far more deranged assassin to the precinct, a double insurance policy in case he failed. At the front desk, an officer was just beginning to think the man holding balloons looked remarkably like a fugitive in the system. The next second, the man pulled out a handgun. Using the receptionist's equipment to call for a medical emergency, he whipped off his hat and assumed the role of the desk clerk. He herded the arriving officers together and took them all down with a surprise attack from behind. He then returned to the computer to hunt for the cell block's access code. Inside the cells, the two men heard the gunfire and realized the situation had turned lethal. The swindler, however, likely had no idea that the assassin across from him went by a notorious nickname. She sprinted towards the holding cells as the precinct fell into utter chaos. She shattered the lock on the outer door and slammed the ballistic glass shut. Spinning around, she drew her baton, entered the access code, and jammed the baton into the heavy steel gate to secure it. The madman was closing in. Holding her breath, she began resetting the security codes, knowing he had already obtained the old ones. While the system rebooted, she scrambled to reload her weapon, even as the ballistic glass behind her began to splinter under the onslaught. Luck was on her side. Seizing the opening, she fired a suppressive shot, ducked into the cell block, and sealed the final gate behind her. This was now the last safe zone in the precinct. The madman, realizing the stalemate, turned and vanished into the shadows of the hallway. Now she faced a new dilemma. Which of the two prisoners could she trust? Bleeding from a wound in her abdomen, she desperately needed backup. The first candidate, the man in the suit. She had arrested him herself for a disturbance at a gala, but he had managed to hide a suspicious gunshot wound behind a web of lies. She concluded the swindler was untrustworthy. The second candidate, the bearded man arrested by her colleague. He was a professional who had already attempted an assassination within these very walls. He was equally dangerous. As she hesitated,
Valerie?
backup arrived just 1 minute after her call, impossibly fast. There was a mole in the precinct. No real help was coming.
We're getting in there!
The traitor produced the building's blueprints, targeting the weakest wall of the cell block to breach her defenses. Ironically, the arrival of the mole provided her with the clarity she needed to break the deadlock. An assassin might not be sincere, but a swindler is eternally a swindler. She tossed the cell keys to the swindler and handed him her service weapon. As expected, he didn't stop to help her. Instead, he slipped out to ambush the madman, successfully scavenging the villain's heavier weaponry. He then cut the power, hoping to use the darkness to his advantage. Next, she released the assassin from the opposite cell. Moving like a ghost in the blacked-out station, the assassin swiftly neutralized the mole and took down the unarmed madman. However, in the moment of victory, the swindler betrayed him with a sneak attack. The swindler doused the cells in gasoline and pulled the trigger, setting the entire block ablaze. He walked toward the precinct exit with the swagger of a victor, unaware that she had already bandaged her wounds with the assassin's help. The swindler attempted a final ambush using a gasoline canister, but she was faster. With a precision shot, she struck a fire extinguisher, forcing the poor marksman into a corner. An unexpected explosion from the cells sent the swindler crashing to the ground. She retrieved her final bullet, aimed at the fleeing man, and found her mark.